Let's talk about the Titanic. I have always been fascinated by it since I was in kindergarten, and I realized this morning that 113 years ago today, the Titanic would have hit the iceberg, and when I post this tomorrow, April 15th, it would have been sunk by then. I had a question that I hadn't thought about before, but it kind of led me on a rabbit hole. It was, what did these passengers eat? You know, and first class especially, I was very curious, what were these people's last meal on the ship? And it's about a 12-course menu, I'll put it right there, but their dessert was something called Waldorf Pudding. And I'd never heard of it before. I automatically thought of the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York, but it's not correlated or connected to that at all. It was kind of its own thing. It's basically a mix of apples and these warm spices and bread. And I thought it would be interesting to talk about some of these passengers and who they were while we make this pudding. So here we are. I got all my apples, I got all my stuff. Let's dive in. So today is April 15th, the day after I filmed this. I'm actually enjoying what I made last night. So I was actually very pleasantly surprised by this Waldorf pudding. It was a very simple recipe, as you'll see. It's very, very simple, but it was delicious, especially when you add butter on top at the end. It's super good. Highly recommend checking that out. So you can just watch along as I talk about some of the stories from the Titanic that I find pretty fascinating. So the first story I want to cover is about a lady named Margaret Brown. You may know her as the unsinkable Molly Brown. There have been plays about her, there have been movies about her. I was lucky enough to visit her house in Denver, where I found this. It's a replica of, it's called Ush Bat. I want to say it's called Ush Apti. And I'm butchering that name, but it's called Ush Apti. And it's basically an Egyptian talisman that Margaret Brown had with her on lifeboat number 6. And she basically attributes, it's one of the few possessions she took with her on the boat, and she attributes this talisman to her survival, essentially her good luck to surviving, and she carried that with her the rest of her life. That was a story that she told a lot, and I found that fascinating when I visited her house. Another piece of interesting history is about the Astor family. I don't know if you've heard about them. This book is fascinating. It's by Anderson Cooper and Catherine Howe. Fascinating book. I only knew about John Jacob Astor IV, who was on the Titanic, but obviously there is a lot to that family. The gentleman, John Jacob Astor IV, he was kind of escaping a scandal in Europe with his new wife, Madeline. She was 18, she was pregnant, and it was kind of a big deal, and there was a lot of fire going on around them, so they had to escape. Unfortunately, and at this time, by the way, he was like the richest man in, I want to say, the world. His net worth was about $87 million, which nowadays is about $2.8 billion, which is just insane. But he went down with the ship. And I think that was, he became a symbol in a sense, simply because you think about it, you know, no matter how much money you have in the end, if it's your time, it's your time. And that's kind of a dark thing to think about, but basically live life to the fullest is what I always take away from that idea. And lastly, there is this museum in Las Vegas. It's the Titanic Museum, and there you can buy a piece of authentic Titanic coal. And it's not controversial per se, because obviously if you're taking, like, if this was a White Star Line dish, that'd be a lot more controversial. That's like grave robbing, in my opinion. But I think having a piece of coal, just something that powered the ship when there's an abundance of it at the bottom of the ocean, that was something that I couldn't resist having, just because this powered this greatest ship in the world, you know, the most famous ship in the world. Name another ship of this magnitude. The Titanic is the most famous ship, even though it went down on its maiden voyage. But I think it's just interesting to think about how the 1,500 people that passed away, there were only 700 survivors around that range, and there's just so many stories. I love the movie Titanic because they explore some of the real stories on that ship in such an eloquent way. Like, no matter how much money you had, no matter how little money you had, there was definitely a class divide, clearly with the first through third class, but I mean, in the end, we're all just people. We're all people. It doesn't matter what we do in life. If, like, they all went out the same way, which is a very heartbreaking way of going out. But I think it's a good reminder just to live life. And so this is very delicious. I highly recommend trying it. I'm definitely going to explore some more recipes and how they can be tied to historical events. But thank you for tuning in if you've watched this far, and I will see you guys soon.